There's something different, a presence that bathes this third installment in the Alien franchise in a shroud of gloom. It's always stuck out, becoming a point of curiosity that inevitably pulls me in for another viewing. And while it's never truly captivated me like the previous films, it's undoubtedly still a good watch, assuming it's the assembly cut.
Amen.
Amen.
So why don't we start this off? I'm going to analyze this movie to try and understand what draws me in, and in the process, maybe gain a new appreciation for this often overlooked entry in the Alien franchise.
We're the Space Marines! Drake, Ripley, Apone. Alien invasion problem? Send in the Marines!
Space Marines, aliens!
Ripley arrives, or rather crash lands, on the planet Fiorina or Fury 161, the location of a maximum security prison and former labor camp that now operates with a skeleton crew overseeing just 22 inmates. And if I were to choose one word to describe this location, it would be decay. We can see this in the way the architecture of the facility is presented. The world that Ripley stumbles upon mirrors that of our own, the urban decay that blighted several Western cities in the late 20th century. This is of course nothing new in science fiction, which commonly references this sociological process as a point of commentary. But its inclusion in the story is woven in with care. It's not the focal point of the film, but instead it's a natural consequence of the world building and history behind Fury 161. It's a piece of the puzzle, and one that will help accentuate the themes that the story will explore. So what can we draw from this? Well, the decay we see in the buildings is a representation of things that have long passed their usefulness. It's a silhouette of humanity, inhabited by men who, much like the walls they rest upon, linger on the edge of a barren rock, passing years like days until they too fade away into darkness. Or in short, we can draw a connection between the disrepair of the industrial buildings and the inmates that call it home. However, we must point out that the inmates that inhabit this prison all elected to stay. They willingly chose to see out the remainder of their sentences in a discarded world. And this shared resignation is revealing as it openly invites the inevitable: death. It's then understandable, or at least I've begun to understand, why it's not exactly fear that enshrouds this story. Unlike the two previous films that in one way or another leaned on this primal emotion to grab our attention, David Fincher's take on the franchise has a more nuanced approach. Death is ever present in the world of Fury 161, even before the Xenomorph's arrival. So fear for one's life has been swapped out for a disquieting acceptance of mortality. So how does this change things? Well, conveniently, one of the major elements in this film involves the religious beliefs practiced by the inmates, a homebrew millenarian doctrine that calls for the coming of the apocalypse. The Xenomorph's presence can therefore be taken as a manifestation of the aforementioned death, delivering judgment as required by the practiced religion. And the beauty of this metaphorical label is that it can take many shapes, from Gollick's dragon to maybe even a banshee, a spirit that was considered an omen of death. This warping of the basic spooky monster into a folklore or religious entity allows for it to exist as both a metaphorical representation of our fear for the unknown and a beast that just loves to munch on a human or two.
Oh, great. Wonderful.
Looking back at everything discussed so far, it becomes apparent that the film's atmosphere is established through the concepts of decay and death. It's engraved in every scene. It sways in the barren landscape. It takes refuge in the candlelit monoliths of our industrialization. It communes seeking warmth among the cold steel, and it hisses in anticipation of the end.
There's something very deep-rooted psychological feeling about this monster. It's a fear that's almost primordial.
The movie is good, but not great. The first half I rather enjoy, and it's the basis for this analysis. But as the story rolls along, I find it begins to devolve into your typical monster flick. However, considering how famously troubled this production was, it's quite impressive that this turned out as well as it did. Again, specifically referring to the assembly cut and not the original theatrical release. With all that said, the most fascinating aspect of this production is not the finished product, but what happened before. A total of 4 scripts or visions were penned before the 5th and final script took shape, and in the near future, I'll be covering one of these discarded screenplays. So don't forget to tune back in, and thank you for watching.